Hey guys, welcome back to another video. So today we are talking about something called hemostasis. You can pronounce it as hemostasis, but basically it's a very fancy term for blood clotting. And what does blood clotting mean? So before we get into that, can you guys say what a hemorrhage means? Or say if someone says, hey, I'm hemorrhaging. How do you spell this? I'm hemorrhaging. That just means, hey man, I'm bleeding. So hemostasis is basically a fancy term that just means that we want to stop the bleeding, meaning we create clots, and we do that through platelets. Hopefully you guys know that. So there's 3 steps in hemostasis, 3 major steps. I'll just kind of list them out for you right here. So the first step that we go into is vascular spasms. The second step that we go into is, what is it? Let me think. I kind of forgot. Vascular spasms, and then, oh right, how did I forget that? Platelet plugs. And the third one is spell that wrong. Coagulation. So those are the 3 steps. So we'll focus on the first step right now. And the first step right now is vascular spasms. Okay, before we get into that, let's go into the anatomy of a blood vessel, or just a broad visual. So let's say that, hey, this is my blood vessel, and as you can see, there's damage done to the blood vessel. Because there's damage done to the blood vessel, we have epithelium inside that can be damaged. Remember, simple squamous epithelium. Or we have connective tissue outside that is damaged. Okay, so this is my epithelium, and we'll say simple squamous. And my connective tissue outside is damaged. So there's a lot of damaged stuff happening. So connective tissue is damaged. So, like you know, blood flows through blood vessels. So I'm having this blood flow through my blood vessels. Okay? And I'll just put some platelets in here. Just some dots of platelets, because we know that there's platelets in blood. But before we can have this area close up, before we can have platelets coming and clotting over here, the body's gonna do first is, like the name says, vascular spasm. It's going to spasm, meaning that it's going to contract right here, and the blood vessel is going to be much smaller in diameter when compared to how it was originally before. So there should be a gap right there, my bad. And that means less and less blood can flow out of here. So before clotting happens and it's trying to heal this wound right here, your body's literally going to kind of close that, close it right here, the blood vessel. So that's my first step, and it's called vascular spasm. Now my second step, the one that I forgot in the beginning, but now I remember, is formation of platelet plug. And as you can kind of tell, this is where we're going to use the platelets, because in the first step the platelets were there, but we needed to make sure that blood vessel was reduced so less blood could flow out of it. So during platelet plug, let's remember to just draw it again, because it's very important. Remember, it's reduced compared to how it was. So my blood vessel is going to be reduced. or smaller. And what I'm gonna have here is, remember, like I said, damaged epithelium right here, simple squamous epithelium, damaged connective tissue on the outside. And because, if you guys know or remember, connective tissue is very famous or well known for the presence of what? Collagen. So basically, I'm going to have disrupted collagen strands right here. And because I have disrupted collagen strands right here, I have something else that is present because you can visibly see it. And these little dots right here is called my von Willebrand factors, or my VWFs. And basically what's going to happen is your von Willebrand factors, they're going to call, so let's just say my blood's right here. They're going to call platelets flowing in the blood. So von Willebrand factors, they cause platelets to come. And we can think of this as maybe a flag, because they're like, hey, these things are like, hey, platelets, come, we need your help. We need to form a clot right here. So the platelets are gonna come. So I have platelets right here. And as soon as it connects to the von Willebrand factors on the collagen, the platelet is going to release certain chemicals. And what these chemicals will do, the platelets will release, they're going to call more platelets to occur or come. Say, hey, we need a platelet party. We need to fill, this wound right here. So the chemicals that can be released, so these are 3 important chemicals you'll have to know. So the first chemical we've heard of, it is ADP. The second chemical is serotonin. And the third chemical is thromboxane. And these 3 chemicals will be needing to go here in the purple right here. It's going to call more blue. It's going to call more platelets. Okay, so as a result, you're going to have more platelets form here because the chemicals are calling more and more platelets to come. Okay, so what are the functions of these chemicals right here? So if I can just write right here the functions. So the first function is it is going to call more platelets. And the second function is, I'm going to write the second function right here, is it is going to cause more vascular spasms. So these chemicals do 2 things. So first of all, it's going to be like, hey, these chemicals in these purple, it's going to be like, hey, we need more platelets. And second of all, it's going to cause more reduction with the diameter for the blood vessel. So that is basically the platelet plug. And we don't end with that step. I mean, you may think, hey, there's a lot of platelets here, but there's one last step. My bad. There's one last step that is very important for this whole process. And this step is called, so step 3 is called coagulation. And that's basically when fibrin comes into play. Think about it. Okay, let's think about it. Let me get another black marker. Hopefully this works better. Oh, that worked horribly. Horrible. Okay. A little better. Okay. So remember what's happening is we've gotten a lot of platelet formation right here because we talked about, right, the chemicals, which was what again? It was ADP, serotonin, and thromboxane. The chemicals were released here Remember, the purple chemicals were released, so they called more platelets to come. They called more platelets. And okay, yeah, there is less blood flowing through here, but what will make it even more secure is a thing called fibrin. And if you remember, fibrin was a very important part of connective tissue. So fibrin, let me just make a bigger version of that right here. So this is my platelets, right? Let's just say this is my platelets all together. What fibrin is going to do is basically connect it together so it's much stronger. Okay? Sorry, that's a very bad visualization, but hopefully you get the concept right there. Okay, so there's two things before we get into that we need to kind of go over. It's two types of pathways we can have. So the first type of pathway we can have is my extrinsic pathway, which, okay, let me say what the other pathway is. The other pathway is intrinsic pathway. What is the difference between these two pathways? Well, we can look at the front, right? One is in, and X kind of means out, right? So extrinsic pathway is basically when there is tissue damage outside the blood vessel. And intrinsic, can you guess what that means? It's tissue damage inside the blood vessel. So there's tissue damage both in these two pathways right here, in the intrinsic pathway and the extrinsic pathway. One is outside tissue damage and one is inside tissue damage in the blood vessel. So these two pathways, these are just two different pathways, but the formation of fibrin, which remember is important for kind of securing that clotting that's happening right here. The formation of fibrin is the last thing we're going to go over, the formation of fibrin. Because remember, that's the last step for clotting with the coagulation. Remember, right here, as we see, I have my platelets, but the fibrin is going to make it really strong and packed, especially if it was really big wounds that are occurring. But for the formation of fibrin, just memorize these enzymes that I will be giving you, or these names. You don't really have to know the understanding of each one of them. Just know that all of these names I'm giving you will basically cause, and it's where fibrin comes from, and we need to know why fibrin's important. Okay, so the first thing that you're gonna have is sorry, one second. The first thing that you're gonna have is prothrombinase. And that will lead to activation of prothrombin, which will lead to the activation of thrombin, and that will lead to fibrinogen. And one thing about fibrinogen is, remember, I think I mentioned that earlier, but ogen means it's inactive. We'll see that later in A&P too, but what can we think about? This is inactive fibrin, so when it's activated, it will cause fibrin, and that's our final thing that we need for clotting, right? So it's just these 5 different steps right here that will lead to the formation of fibrin, which in turn leads to proper clotting. So not only do I have my platelets going on right here, but I have my formation of fibrin going on with here, which will really pack that together. You see? Yeah. So fibrin is very important. I think that's the most important step. It really anchors my platelet plug in place. So that's about it, guys. I hope you learn more about hemostasis. God bless.